This is Jackie Cooper with Crypto Mom 2 Talk Show and the Blockchain Legal Institute. I want to welcome everyone to this show, and I want to remind everyone to definitely like and subscribe because there's some wonderful conversations that I have in the queue. I think 8 right now that I am in the process of editing, and I'll be dropping them, and I want to make sure you are in the know always about the wonderful things that are happening within our blockchain space. For those that are new to Crypto Mom 2, I want to thank you, and I will be hopping over to my guest in just a quick second. But I want to share a little bit about my background in case you're not familiar. I am an author of the Bitcoin Cinderella blockchain series, and I'm really excited about some of the new books that I'll be publishing this year. In fact, my guest is going to be in one of them. She's going to be in the Bitcoin Cinderella and the True Stories of Women in Bitcoin. And then I'm also writing a book about Bermuda, and that will be the Bitcoin Cinderella and the Pink Sands Treasures of Bermuda, and that will be about fintech. And so there's a lot of wonderful blockchain literature that you can share with your families to help them understand the vocabulary within this space. And then the other thing that as an attorney, I'm very much, and as an educator, I'm very much passionate about making sure that everyone has the resources that they need. And so I invite everyone to hop over to the Blockchain Legal Institute, www.bli.tools for those that are on the audio side, and check out the resources. The resources are there not just for lawyers or for accountants. As consumers within this space, as business people within this space, we're all impacted by laws and policies. So the Blockchain Legal Institute really is a centralized library that provides access to both content about definitions and what's going on and resources, people in the community, as well as the various laws and rules that are happening within the United States and around the world. So with that, I want to welcome my guest to Crypto Mom 2. I've had many conversations with her, both offline as well as online, and I had the honor to be in her Twitter space when I was up in Toronto at the Blockchain Futurist Conference, and we had a fun time speaking. She is a host which knows how to ask questions, and she guides this conversation on so many topics. So again, I'm going to have her Twitter handle and other contact information in the blog below. So if you're driving and listening and you don't have paper and pen, don't worry, just come back to this space. And again, we are here to support you and answer any questions that you might have. So today, welcome. How are you doing today? I'm going to hop over to you.
Hey, Jackie, it's so lovely to be here. And yeah, as you said, we've had many wonderful conversations. So I'm looking to just extend all of the many that we've already had and really just aim to add value today to the listeners listening from home or from car or from tram, wherever you're listening from. That's the beauty of listening to people speak and listening to people's conversations.
So one of the things that we've talked about offline is the importance of having online conversations. And you're actually, I'm in Maryland and you're across the world. Why don't you share where you are? And you've been a digital nomad for many years, and you've changed businesses, you've expanded, and you are helping the community in so many ways. So where are you currently based, and share a little bit more about where you've been?
So I'm South African by birth. I happen to be in South Africa at the moment, in beautiful Cape Town. I'm right by the beach, so I'm just watching the Atlantic Ocean and the waves lapping to shore and the sunset over the sea. So it's really fantastic. The Table Mountain just there behind me, so it's a picturesque scene. But I'm only here for a holiday because I haven't lived here for many years, as you rightly said. Have been a digital nomad since my son was 10 and he's 17 now. And in fact, we had a conversation about it just this morning where I was just reminiscing with him. You know, when I grew up in a city that was almost, just a large farm town. I mean, it was really not, even on national level, it was not the forefront of anything. So just to kind of transcend from that kind of background, to have a more national focus and then ultimately an international focus. And I was saying to my son this morning, because he's planning his travels. And, then he wants to go do this in this country and that country. And I was just saying to him, it's so different from the way that I used to grow up. Because when I grew up, I mean, I was born in the town that I lived in all throughout my schooling, my high schooling, and even my early adulthood. So I had a very different lifestyle. And it certainly does afford you a completely view of the world when you have this global lifestyle. So we've lived in Asia over the years, in Europe. I mean, and at the moment, we really kind of bounce between all of these different continents, especially as I travel a lot for work. So yeah, it's been an interesting lifestyle so far. And you definitely do get to understand a lot of nuances about different cultures and about what brings us together and also the differences between us. But how most of the differences are not really that different. The details are different, but the fundamentals are pretty much the same no matter where you go. So yeah, a lot of food for thought to have this kind of lifestyle.
Yeah. Now, you decided to have this lifestyle for a reason. And you are in the blockchain community and you're doing a lot. So what made you decide to navigate into this space? Because it's, again, a lot of the individuals who are in the blockchain space come from, and I really don't like using this word traditional, because what's traditional one year, or what's not traditional one year is traditional another year, because as people's awareness change, it becomes more adopted. So, but you've been in this space for a while, and what made you think about doing the traveling and doing the business that you're in?
Yeah, so the traveling preceded the blockchain industry, but I think it was all intertwined long before I knew what consciously and what was unfolding before me. So my early career, I mean, if I go all the way back, I started my career in psychology and very quickly realized that, sitting in a room and counseling others, that's not where my passion that's not where it was seated. It was something that I was passionate about, but certainly not as a career. And I think this is one of the other issues in terms of just career counseling in high school, and having had not as much access to information that we do today, because that preceded the internet, of course. So I only could go into job options that I knew already that it existed. And that was quite limited compared to what we have today, where you can really just create your own career. So started in psychology, realized it wasn't for me, and then really as a serendipity, I guess, fell into digital marketing, which is back in 2011, 2012, what we used to call it. Now it's just marketing, because I had learned. My son my son is neurodiverse, and I wanted to create resources for the global neurodiversity community, but then kind of fell into homeschooling because it was easier for us to homeschool because of just how restrictive the education system was, and how the limiting beliefs that they have towards children that are different. Different in the sense they just have different brains and how these brains function, which is beautiful. And I mean, as a neurodiverse family, I'm so happy to be able to support my son in a way that back in my childhood, parents didn't know that these issues existed, and children simply didn't get the same support. So I almost feel I'm supporting myself as an inner parent in the same way that I'm supporting my son. But because I was building resources for that global community, I fell into digital marketing almost by accident. And at the time, it was a really, really early nascent time in terms of businesses wanting to come in, SMEs wanting to come in. The big brands were already online, but the average business owner didn't understand why they needed a website, why they needed a social media page. And it's, fast forward 10 years or so, we're at the same kind of point where it's really early days for blockchain, and a lot of conglomerates are the ones that have had the resources and the foresight perhaps to kind of dabble a little bit in it and have a proof of concept. But most small businesses, they don't really have this as part of their professional imagination just yet because the technology is so early. So you either find that you have complete Web3 businesses that build Web3 from the ground up, or, you know, businesses are not there yet. But so I kind of came into blockchain in the middle of these two periods in 2017 because I'd owned a marketing agency, and then I was heading up digital marketing again, as it was called at the time, for the global pharmaceutical company. And so I really had experience of the space from very different angles. But I also realized when I was working in corporate, this was not going to work for me. So quit my job, you know, took my son, who was already unschooling at that time. So we were not bound to be in a specific location because of his education. And we started traveling, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I was doing environmental marketing consulting for a while. And then I thought, okay, what is it that I'm truly passionate about? Because now, having worked in pharma, it feels like my soul has been sucked from me, and I need to, I need to rectify the karma that's been generated as a result of me working in this industry. And I really just wanted to give back. I think kind of that was the backwater narrative that was happening in my subconscious. But I had always had a passion for writing. At school, everyone assumed I would be an author one day. So, really kind of missed a lot of signs before I finally found my path. And I knew that I was never going to be employed as a journalist because that's a career path that I hadn't chosen. And so when I then got the opportunity to work as a journalist, I grabbed it with both hands because I was not doing it because I needed the income. It was just, oh, finally, I've been a school journalist, head school journalist throughout high school, was the youngest journalist in my high school. So, I had that sort of schooling, educational background, but I wanted to be a real journalist in the real world. But it happened to be in blockchain, and I knew nothing about blockchain. However, what you want is always the strongest motivating force. So I'm someone who believes in going after what I want instead of, thinking that there's something that I can't pursue because I don't have the skills, don't have the knowledge. I really believe in kind of leaping and growing wings on the way down. And so I started working as a journalist, and I was researching on the job, and I was learning about blockchain as I was researching and writing about it. But very quickly, it really became so apparent to me that this is something unlike anything else that I had ever encountered. And I'd come across Bitcoin in 2012. I was way too much of a non-math, non-science kind of person to understand anything that it was. I don't even know if I understood that it was truly an alternative currency, because I think, at the time I was so embroiled in the predominant paradigm of, money is only through the government, and there's only one way to do this. The entire fiscal system, it's set in stone. And so I think in 2012, I couldn't even comprehend the meaning of what it was all about. And there was definitely, this kind of veil that comes into your brain when something is above your level of understanding and comprehension, and you kind of have a cognitive bias against, well, I don't understand it, so I'm not even going to try. So by 2017, I think enough time had passed for the industry and the concept of technology to be idiot-proofed, as I like to say, because that's kind of what I told myself in 2012. Like, as soon as it becomes understandable to people like me, then I'll get into it if it's still around at that time. And so kind of that's what happened in 2017. And I think ever since, the industry has evolved so much in so many different levels. And I've been involved in the industry at so many different levels. I've worked as a journalist for multiple publications, including Bitcoin.com, investing.com, Be in Crypto, and others. But I've also, I've been a fractional CMO at multiple different companies over the years. And some of these were times when the market was riding high, and others when it crashed, and kind of in everywhere in the middle. And I, for the past 2 years or so, been the co-founder at AdLunam. So I've really seen so many different aspects of the industry. Of course, I'm also an advisor at many different projects. I speak at conferences, I engage with the community. So I see so many different unfoldings that have taken place over the years. A few years ago, it felt like everybody knew everybody in the industry because it was really so small. And, fast forward to today and you meet new people every day. And there's not enough days in a year to meet the amount of new people that have entered the space. And so that really gives me a lot of hope in terms of kind of what I've been seeing over these last few years since 2012, when unfortunately I didn't have the foresight or really the understanding how to buy Bitcoin, or otherwise we might not have been sitting here.
But you have that knowledge now.
Absolutely. I'm hodling. This is not financial advice.
No, these conversations are not financial advice, nor legal advice, nor investment advice, not at all. This is all personal opinion and education. So, what is your focus now? I know that that's a pretty broad question. We were talking about the fact that you do Twitter Spaces, but you also do you have accelerators. You are for startups. You do a lot of different things. What's your primary focus now, or where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, so I think extrapolating just for the minute, although I think it's almost impossible to
Yeah.
separate these two things. One aspect of kind of what I'm involved with is really where do I see the space going, and how do I want to contribute to shaping the narrative in a certain way? Because I think, as we were talking earlier, there's a lot of social good aspects that are possible in the space, but it's not necessarily the focus for the industry, because the industry is very focused on big gains and 60xing investments, and that's very valid. It's why this industry is what it is. If you extrapolate, this industry from those possible profits, probably you're not going to find as many people interested. So that's the reality. However, I always think that injecting your own value system into what you're doing is incredibly important. And so I would say overall, my focus as an individual is a very humanitarian approach to what digital identities are. Because we're moving into a time, you and I were born in times where there was no technology, and, we really made do without it. But the next generation, for them, my son already, he's already almost 18. So he also was born before technology was what it is today. But the generation after him, they are completely digital. And how this is changing me as a person, I've transformed as a kind of hybrid being between the offline me and the online me. And so all the more how it's going to affect the next and the next and the next generation, I think is a really important conversation. And so that's something that I always interweave into kind of everything that I do. And a lot of, related sort of topics, but I'm not going to take up all the time because it really can. But so professionally then at AdLunam, so we are an investment ecosystem that specifically is focused on the Web3 industry. I think the key focus that's so incredibly important in light of what I'm going to say, but also what I have just said, is this idea that Web3, blockchain, crypto, it's meant to democratize access. Now, what this access means is different for many different projects and for many different individuals. I myself am from a third world country, so to speak, South Africa, because of its economic standing. It's very difficult. For example, I was supposed to speak in Denmark this week at the Nordic Blockchain Conference, and I couldn't because we had riots here that led to unrest, and so I couldn't apply for my Schengen visa, and so I therefore cannot travel to the conference. Now, these are the kind of realities that people deal with on the ground. And yes, there's not that many solutions that we have just yet for really eradicating poverty and inequality. However, the digital realm gives people the possibility to transcend digitally what they might not have access to locally. So being able to work remotely, for example, and be part of the blockchain industry, that's a massive opportunity for people on continent in the continent like Africa, for example, or in Asia, in South America, where they are able to generate an income by being in the industry, you know, contributing as salaried employees, but working remotely. So that on the one hand, I think is something that definitely needs to be talked about more in terms of the social good that the industry is doing. But then on the other hand, so what we do is we work with early stage startups, and this is between once they've received seed funding all the way to their public sale. So this can be a couple of months, or at the moment, because of the market, it seems like it's a couple of years. And so we support them in many different aspects, whether this is community growth, whether it's marketing, whether it's tokenomics, connecting them to investors. So really the full spectrum service, because we are in the business of partnering with partners that help our startups, you know, kind of get to that level where they're able to do the public sale, which is a very difficult time in the market right now, because of course everyone's building, but there's not really a lot of movement happening. And so for this reason, this is something that we focus heavily on at the moment. We do also have the public sale investment platform that has an engage to earn model. So this is designed, you know, for people. If you imagine you go on Twitter, you go on Reddit, on Discord, on Telegram, all of these different platforms where you have to stay updated. I mean, there's so many different groups, especially in Web3, you know, for every project that you support, that you are part of, they have multiple social media channels, and they're in Discord and on, you know, everywhere. And so as an investor, especially a retail investor, you need to put in a lot of time and attention to be able to stay updated. So this is something that you don't have much of a choice about, but you're not compensated for your time. And so really the model that we've come up with is companies that are launching and doing their public sale, they are spending a massive marketing budget already. And they're spending it everywhere. They're spending it hoping, you know, kind of throwing a stone into the bush and hoping that something's going to come out, because they're not really sure if they are genuinely connecting with the community that is passionate about what they are doing. So what our platform does, but yeah, because of the market, that aspect is not live, because everyone's in hibernation. When the bear comes out, everyone hibernates. So what our platform does is it has a gamified approach where, you know, retail investors are able to engage, and that engagement leads them to be able to invest in projects that are doing public sales. But so yeah, just to kind of recap on, I know I took the answer to this conversation
No, it's
in
all
multiple
good. It's all
different
good.
directions.
It's all good because we have many conversations, so it's all good.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing how when you and I speak, it always goes in so many different directions. And I don't always try to stay on point necessarily, because I think we touch on so many different things that if we were to kind of stick to one area at a time, it doesn't get to unlock the other possibilities or the other directions that you could take with the question and the answer.
I totally agree. And that's why I like open-ended questions, because this is the type of intelligent conversation that I think that everyone needs to hear, because there is no straight or narrow answer. And our community is so broad. So what you're doing and everything, it also shows for everyone who's listening, your own knowledge base and the expertise that you've created and developed because of the fact that this community has so many layers to it. So
Absolutely. No, I think that is probably the biggest change that I've seen over the last few years. And I would say that a lot of this started because of COVID. I think because people were home, and so this has honestly, there was a time when my favorite question was, how did you get into the blockchain industry? Because, you know, those answers are as varied as the people on Earth. You will never get to hear the same story twice. I mean, there might be groupings of stories that sound very similar, and then you get outliers where it's a completely unique story and kind of everything in between. But that used to be my favorite question. But since COVID, my favorite question has become, how has COVID changed you? Because I think the shifts that have taken place ever since have been massive. Now, for me, for example, I started working remotely in, oh my God, I mean, since my son was born, I always tried to work from home anyway. That was kind of how I shaped my career. I didn't want to make career choices that took me away from him, which corporate did, which was, one of the reasons that I was in and out as quick as I could. But it's been many years. I think it's been for sure over a decade that I've worked remotely. And the amazing thing is a lot of people experienced this for the first time in their lives during COVID. So they'd never worked remotely before, and kids had never schooled remotely. And so it completely flipped on its head everything that society knew about itself and expected of itself, and kind of found familiar. I mean, you read about the schooling system in Finland and it sounds so exotic because it's very different from the way we do things in XYZ country. But there's a typical system. I mean, people wake up in the morning in every country in the world. They wake up, they go to work, they stay at work for most of the day, and they come home in the evening, and kids do the same. And it's very rare for any country to have a model that is different to this. And suddenly, with, like a Thanos snap, immediately that was completely reversed. And everyone was at home and everyone were doing their things online. And so it really, I think, shifted the general global consciousness in some way, because people started thinking differently about things that they had before. And so I've seen since COVID happened, and the 2021 sort of NFT summer where NFTs became massive and they were going to be the next hallelujah, savior resource that we have in the world, and it's going to fix everyone's boo-boos. And I mean, that was a really interesting time to get a lot of people into the space. Because I mean, it is very important for the space to evolve, because if the same people remain in the same space and there's no growth, well, then at some point there's going to be no space. So we need a diversity of voices. And this is something I've seen over the last, 2 to 3 years, more than ever before. But now the question is, because the market is in such a difficult time, because I mean, blockchain as a technology is a mainstay. It is the technology that is allowing all of these decentralization principles and self-sovereignty and all of these qualities and philosophies that people are aligned with in the Web3 space. Blockchain is the technology that underwrites this, and the technology is not going anywhere. But because the market is so closely linked to the financial performance, the Bitcoin price, and the Bitcoin price, goes up or down and is very volatile as it is, then all of the other tokens in the entire industry suffer as well. So as long as it's so closely tied, it is going to remain a space that welcomes a lot of interesting people from every different background, but we are not going to see the kind of adoption and growth that we can see and definitely will see at some point, when people start realizing that there is a difference between the technological solutions and how much profit you can make from any particular coin. So I think we're definitely very, very, very early days there. And if you look at AI, the AI adoption rate with retail consumers, I mean, it skyrocketed almost from the get-go, which really tells us something about utility. Because who doesn't use a solution like ChatGPT? We all use it for different use cases. I sometimes laugh at myself. I feel like I should publish a book just on wacky conversations to have with ChatGPT, because I'm having so much fun with it, and I'm having fun with it in a way that it's not possible to do with a human, because I need access to that data, but I use it very creatively and out of the box thinking. So for me, the adoption of AI personally has been almost instantaneous because I have a very strong use case for it. Well, in my case, having fun, exploring kind of certain boundaries of thought. Um, but then for a lot of people, I mean, it's freeing up time and it's, you know, it has a real world utility. I mean, there's also a conversation about the dangers of AI, of course, but that is always part and parcel of any technology. Everything is moving faster than we would like it to, and everything is moving faster than it probably ought to, which is also interesting how we are going to adopt AI, because maybe it can help us as much as, you know, we have to put up guardrails that we are not necessarily doing. But that's for sure a different conversation. But so the adoption difference between AI and in Web3, where the utility is not as strong. You know, I can invest in a game, in a Web3 game that promises XYZ, but in reality, building a game takes an incredibly long time and takes an incredible amount of money. Now, not to say that this cannot be done in a shorter time with, you know, less money. However, the problem with a lot of Web3 games, for example, is it's about the crypto aspect. It's not really about the game. Now, gamers are interested in quality games and AAA games. They play games not because they want to earn money. They play games because they want to relax. They want to have fun. So I think there's a lot of lessons that we still need to learn. But yes, the amount of or the variety of people, the diversity of voices in the space, and what everyone contributes. This is probably the thing that I'm the most excited about because I see the space evolving almost on a daily basis.
I think one of the things that you mentioned that I think is also important is that with the two things. If we don't have new people in the space, then it sort of is like, you know, everyone being on the same island and everyone talking to each other, sort of like we talked about at, you know, some conferences where you're meeting the same people. But so it's important to have new voices because that also lends to the creativity, because then it means that you hear things from a different perspective. But the other thing that you and I've talked about is that in order to have adoption of any of these concepts, you also have to be looking at the equity of the world and looking at who has internet access, who has access to bank accounts, who has access to the education about what this is, so that way they don't get scammed. And I'm not just talking on the crypto side, even on the traditional side. So all of this has to happen within the business community, and the ethics of the companies who are building in this community need to be really strong to look at how are they supporting the education for the consumers who are going to be using their products. Because I think it's we can't do this in isolation, you know. So everyone has a role with the development of new tech that can help people. Both you and I were talking about, because in the special ed world, you know, for diverse learners who have multiple different learning styles, it's very important for career paths, as well as for the companies who are looking at developing their services or tech to see, are their platforms accessible? And if they are not, how do they make it accessible to both those that need the education as well as those that need access? So there's a lot of different conversations. I mean, you just kind of touch the surface of everything.
Yes, no, this is a very, very big topic. You know, what you said reminded me when I forgot to mention this earlier, but I also had a stint in education, you know, just to round out all of the other many different experiences. I mean, I've been all over the place, but that does give me a vantage point of sorts. So when I did work in special ed for a while, I had a student who so South Africa has 11 official languages, but English is probably I would say number one language, in the sense it's the language that everyone, the mutual language that everyone understands. So you have regional languages, you know, specific to specific areas that people speak, but English is spoken widely all over. And then you have Afrikaans, which is a derivative of Dutch from the Dutch colonialization. The Dutch, the French. I mean, there was a lot happening in South Africa at some point. And so I remember this encounter with a student of mine. So she came from a very wealthy, because it was a special ed school, so you had kids from all different walks of life. And she came from a very wealthy agricultural family. You know, they own huge amounts of land, and I mean, this is really this is one of the issues in South Africa and in the political narrative, is the unequal distribution of land because of apartheid, because of colonialism. And so she's from a family that has access to a lot of resources, and definitely she will never really want for a job. She will never need to go out into the open job market to apply for a job. And I was teaching English, and she absolutely hated the subject and didn't want anything to do with it. And she was already in high school. And I pulled her aside one day and, really tried to have a heart to heart with her and explain to her, it's important for her future, even though the city where she was being schooled and the area where they lived was very Afrikaans dominant. But I mean, it's big world out there. And she looked at me completely puzzled and said, but I mean, I'm never going to leave here, and I'm never going to look for a job. So why do I need to know English? Everyone that I deal with, they speak Afrikaans. And so this story came to mind for me, because I think it's really important to remember the worldview that different people have. This student happened to be someone who was very privileged. Now, they might not have been a globally focused family, but the resources that they have access to, it does allow them, even within their, sort of local ecosystem, it puts them at the top of the food chain. But then there's the rest of the hierarchy. There are so many people around the world, and we can talk about the financial inequality. I mean, South Africa, for example, according to the Gini coefficient, is the #1 most unequal country in the world, the divide between rich and poor. But there's so many different countries where people are really battling financially because of poverty, because of low income, national wages, etc. But there are also so many other different inequalities. I mean, we touched on neurodiversity earlier. If you are a neurodiverse student person in a world that is not built for neurodiverse people, you also you're at a disadvantage. And there's so many different gender inequality, for example. I mean, the list really goes on and on. And so I think when people build products or services or have any sort of engagement with an industry like this, that is still so much a sandbox. And I say sandbox thinking of Minecraft. My son has been playing Minecraft his entire life, and he's never probably going to divorce that relationship, because Minecraft is an environment where he can do and build whatever he wants. And that is how his brain formed as a gamer, is to know, oh, but there's possibilities for me. Whereas there are some other role-playing games, for example, where your choices are a lot more limited in terms of the world that you find yourself in. So in this industry, we're in a sandbox environment where every solution that is being built from scratch. It came from, maybe 1, 2, 5, 10, 100 people's imaginations. This is a very fortunate space for us to be in at this time. And whoever you are, whatever your role or your contribution, the fact that you are here at this time, even if you're just part of the audience following certain pieces of information, or you are just a retail investor investing, $100 into this industry, well, even if you're at that level where you don't day to day and day after day focus on this exclusively, but we're all building this together. But I think especially if this is your day job, which I always say is almost a sacred responsibility, because what you are doing is shaping, by virtue of existing, the direction of this industry. And especially because of, regulatory kind of hawk eyes that are placed on the industry, and all the legal hurdles and the uphill battles and the scams and how people need to be protected. So I think if you are someone working in this space, especially as a founder, you have such an incredibly huge opportunity to do right by people. And so that's why at a time like this, building in this space, and that's why I'm grateful for markets like the one that we have now, because building in this space should not be because of the amount of Lamborghinis that you can buy in, the span of 1 month. It should be about what changes can you make, because when things are easy, everyone is there. And this counts as much for a mature technology market. I mean, how many people are involved with quantum computing right now? Most people have no idea what it is. So, Web3 is closer to quantum computing in terms of adoption than it is in terms of, I don't know, basic technology like a TV or a radio, for example. So the adoption is going to take a lot of time. So why are you here? Are you here when it's a bull market and there's a lot of investment and VC money and retail money and the hypes are 60x, 100x? Is that why you're here? And is that why you're building? Or are you here because you're convinced that the way that things have been going in terms of centralization in a lot of industries, that's something that needs to be disrupted. And for this reason, you are building at a time when it's incredibly difficult to build. And so I think, we touched on this earlier, because of the startups that we work with now at this time and helping them through our acceleration process, leading up to an eventual public sale when the market returns, I really get to see the mindsets that set founders apart in terms of resilience, in terms of pivot. So even for us as a company, I mean, I think we have been challenged as founders in a way that I don't think we anticipated it would require this much of us. But I can promise you, and especially, as a female founder, because there's so much being said about how little support female founders get. But I mean, I think there's also a different aspect to it, because we also don't focus the narrative as much on not only the unicorns. We don't look enough at the average everyday people that are building startups, whether they are female founders, because we always talk about the big guys, right? The top 10, the top 5. But also in a space like this, and how many allies there are for women, for example. I mean, both of my co-founders are male, and I really believe them to be some of my top allies in the space because they really support me. Now, of course, that's the way it should be. But then there's this narrative that women are not being supported. And that's very true on one hand. But on the other hand, there are women, or there are times when women are being supported. So I think, especially at this time, it's really important to give a very balanced narrative of what is happening. Like, there's things that make it very easy to be in the space, and there are things that make it very hard. And sometimes the hard things are also the easy things, and vice versa. And I think that's why, on the one hand, educating people about the technology and educating people about safety and about legal aspects and all of these very important topics. But on the other hand, I think also the narrative for people working in the space, building in the space, is important, because you can't really talk about this stuff with people that don't work in Web3, right? The average person, if you start talking about this, they completely look at you as though an alien just dragged you through the door, and what the heck are you talking about? And the eyes glaze over. So it's very important for us also, I think, as industry professionals, to really support each other with conversations like this, for example, because that really is something that normalizes the issues that we have going on, the opportunities, the highlights, the lowlights. I think it's very important to be real, and we have the opportunity to be authentic, or at least more authentic in Web3 than we are in more established industries like the pharmaceutical industry, for example.
I think that we definitely have the ability to be positively creative in our space. And that's one of the things that I've loved about the conversations I've had with you, because you've navigated so many different areas, and you're also helping so many different people. And you give opportunities to so many different people, both from the social media side to the business building side. So I know we're going to have many conversations. Are there any last minute thoughts that you can think of that you want to share for those that are listening? And for everyone who's listening, also remember, I'm going to have all of the links below, so that way you can reach out and you can follow and subscribe to everything that we've talked about. But any last minute thoughts that you would like to share with those that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think really just thinking about where we are right now. We are really at the dawn of, and when I say dawn, I don't mean, 2 years from now on the 5th of May, for example. This is a dawn that's unfolding, and we're already in this dawn, and it's already happening. It's an unfolding dawn. But things are changing. Things are changing rapidly from one generation to the next. And now, in the current state and the current time period that we are in, change is coming like never before, at a speed like never before. So a lot of this is inevitable, the changes that are going to happen. If you look at, the early adoption curve, for example, how long it takes between when the first initial pioneers kind of venture into unknown territory until, kind of everyone is there. So there is a period of change, but the one thing that is apparent to pretty much everyone, and whether this is technological change or whether this is socio or geopolitical change and sociological change as a result of technology, perhaps climate change. So there's a lot of things happening. So I think it's very, very easy at a time when information is overwhelming. I mean, I'm ADHD, so I know when there's too much happening, I just shut down, and go into my head where there's a million other things happening, but at least I've shut down and shut out the external stimuli. So it's easy to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to ignore this today, or I'm going to think about this tomorrow, or some other time, or it's too early, or so that's a knee-jerk reaction that is very valid and that is very understandable, because the nervous system already is coping with so much in our always on digital life that we have. But now, in the face of all of these changes, that is going to mean, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? If I look at my son's generation, they don't have nearly the same rosy outlook for the future that I had when I was his age. I mean, he is very much a realist and realizes that everything could blow to pieces at any given moment. And I can't even imagine what it must feel like to grow up as a young person with this mental state, or, kind of the cultural mental state. So whoever you are, whatever age you are, you might have different fears for different reasons. But so I would say the one thing really that I can say in closing to this entire conversation is how important it is to just have at least a kind of foothold in what is happening. So even if you glance, a lot of people say they don't want to follow the news. I don't follow the news, but I get news from sources that is not mainstream media, for example. So in the same way, wherever you get your information from, whether it's by listening to conversations like this, whether it's, I think podcast is actually exactly a good example of this, because if this episode is anything to go by, how many different aspects people touch on. But there's so many different podcasts out there that you can listen to, YouTube videos, people that you can follow on social media that talk about different topics. But make sure you find one, or at least one, or even more outlets where you can just keep an eye on what is happening. And yes, it might sometimes feel like it's overwhelming in the same way that the mainstream media news feels it's overwhelming, which is why you have to curate your information. But I think the more you know, the more this fear will dissipate, and the more you will understand, A, how inevitable it is going to be, however long it takes, that society is going to change in all these different ways. But B, that you can prepare for it in the best way possible, because there are people that will be better prepared for the changes than others. We saw this with COVID, for example. People, as I said, I'd been working remotely for about 10 years before that. So for me, COVID, there were certain changes that were difficult, especially when I was under strict lockdown for an entire year in the country that I was kind of a COVID refugee in. So that was really tough. But having to stay home and work online and learn online, that wasn't new to us. So we were able to handle that much better. Doesn't mean that it didn't affect us. So in the same way, if you know what's happening and you keep abreast of changes, doesn't mean you're going to breeze through it. Like, it's still going to be difficult. But I think the difficult part really is to be caught completely unawares. It's kind of realizing at 9 months that you've been pregnant all this time. Pregnancy might not be easy, but the earlier you know about it, the easier it's going to be to adapt, I think. So in that sense, just do yourself a favor, and have an idea of what's coming, because it will help you with opportunities, and it will also help you just introduce a little bit more of acceptance, the Buddhist term of acceptance. So you can't change it, so you're not going to let it ruin the entire span of your lifetime. Again, easier said than done, but yeah, I mean, it is an interesting time, as the Chinese, well, the false Chinese curse says. And we just have to, wing it, and we have to go with it. So resources like this is absolutely fantastic. People putting so much time into creating content like this, really, really important. And if you've been listening to this episode for the entire time that we've been talking, I mean, then you are really important as well, because not many people make it to the end of anything, never mind stick to something for very long. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. And thank you so much, Jackie. This was an absolutely amazing conversation. And just to say, if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best place for me. Nadja Bester, you'll obviously probably see it on the episode details as well. And then AdLunam.cc, AdLunam is Latin for to the moon. So it's a bit of a metaphorical connection to, kind of pushing forward with where we want to go from where we are. And we know, like, moon landings, it's not easy. So yeah, if you're part of the crew, of the industry crew, or you are just supporting the technology because in future it might make some massive changes, then yeah, I'm happy to do moon landings with you at some point in the unknown future.
I love that. I think, just like the title of your company is, I think we all need to reach for the moon, just like reaching for the stars, because again, there are no limits to what we can do. And I know, like, in being friends and associates with you, when you have team of individuals who are there to guide you and also to kind of give advice on the path, it makes it a lot easier. So, and also sharing with what you've just, or adding on to what you just said, it is important to have multiple resources, whether it's, like the BLI Institute as a centralized library, or any other resources that you use, because you do have to do your due diligence. You have to make sure that what you're hearing can be verified more than once, because if it's only one, if the information you're hearing is only said one time and you don't see it duplicated across the space, then maybe there's something not right about that information. And so you have to really, everyone has intelligence. Use your intelligence, critically think about what it is that you're reading, what it is that is being stated in front of you, and use your intuition. If it doesn't feel right, then search out other information. Again, we have many abilities, and sometimes we kind of dull our senses as to where we go. And like you said, it's not about the greed. It's not about the Lamborghinis or things like that. So if you're investing in something, you have to think about, what is the outcome for that investment? What are the resources that I have for that investment? Am I willing to lose that money? You know, and what is the company that I'm investing in doing with those funds? Because again, there's never a guarantee that a company is going to last. We've seen that both traditional as well as in, you know, in other parts of the world. And that's not a reflection on them. The markets change. So, but you've got to do your own research. So, I mean, again, our conversation could go on. So I'm going to, with love, end this now. And I'm going to say, be kind to yourself. As I say at the end of all of my conversations, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We're all so interconnected. We're all part of one world. And I cannot wait to have a chat with you again and to talk with everyone as well. So thank you and have a great day. And definitely like and subscribe because there's definitely more to come. Talk to you soon. Bye, guys.